"Ignorant nanny!" Richard Harrison screamed with total contempt, pointing at Sarah Martinez. He had no idea he was about to open his mouth and never be able to close it again. It was Tuesday, 3:30 p.m., in the 12,000-square-foot penthouse atop Trump Tower in Manhattan, and Richard was demonstrating exactly why he was Wall Street's most feared CEO. His $2.8 billion fortune had created a monster, New York's cruelest boss. "Incompetent!" he yelled at Sarah, who was trying to calm Tyler, his 7-year-old son. "How can someone of your background take care of an elite child?" Sarah just lowered her head, whispering caring words in Spanish to Tyler, who was hiding behind her with eyes red from crying. She had been hired just 3 days ago after the 15th consecutive nanny had quit. The entire apartment seemed frozen. The other 2 employees, Linda, the private chef, and Maria, the housekeeper, pretended to work but paid attention to the torture that had become routine. In 2 years, since his wife's death, Richard had transformed his home into an emotional battlefield. "And you, Tyler," he pointed at the 7-year-old boy, "stop whimpering like a little girl. Men don't cry." Tyler shrank even further behind Sarah, who instinctively placed her hand on the child's shoulder protectively. "Don't touch him," Richard exploded. "You have no right to touch my son. You're just help." Sarah withdrew her hand, but her gaze remained steady. Unlike all the other nannies, she showed no fear. There was something in her eyes, a determination that Richard couldn't interpret. "Mr. Harrison," she said calmly, "Tyler is just scared. Children need affection." "Affection?" Richard roared, making Tyler cry louder. "He needs discipline. He needs to become a man, not an emotional weakling." "He's 7 years old," Sarah observed firmly. "So what? When I was 7, I was already working. I already knew life was tough. I wasn't whimpering." Sarah looked at Tyler, then at Richard. "And were you happy at 7? The question caught Richard off guard. No one had ever questioned his childhood. "Happiness doesn't pay bills," he responded defensively. "No, but it makes life worth living," Sarah replied softly. Richard was irritated by her naturalness. He expected submission, fear, excessive reverence. This woman responded as if she were his equal. "Listen here," he said, walking toward her with intimidating steps. "You were hired to obey, not to give moral lessons." "I was hired to take care of Tyler," Sarah corrected quietly, "and taking care means doing what I say." Sarah looked directly into his eyes. "Taking care means protecting the child's physical and emotional well-being." The response was so professional, so technical, that Richard was momentarily disconcerted. "What's your background?" he asked suspiciously. "Experience," Sarah answered vaguely. "What kind of experience?" "With children who have suffered trauma." The specificity of the answer bothered Richard. "Tyler hasn't suffered any trauma." Sarah looked at the boy, who was trembling with fear behind her. "Hasn't he? His mother died. That's life. He needs to get over it. He needs to process the loss in a healthy way." "You talk like a shrink," Richard said sarcastically. "I speak as someone who understands child development." Richard got irritated with her confidence. "Child development? You probably barely finished high school. Would you feel better if I had a college degree?" Sarah asked. "Obviously, education matters. Then why are you yelling at your son instead of educating him with love?" The question was like a slap. Richard was speechless for several seconds. That's none of your business." "Tyler is my responsibility while I'm here," Sarah said firmly. "Your responsibility is to do what I say. My responsibility is to ensure his well-being." Richard was getting furious with her resistance. "Are you questioning my authority?" "I'm questioning your methods." My methods? He exploded. I built an empire. I have 2.8 billion. I'm one of the most powerful men in America. And your son is terrified of you, Sarah observed calmly. The truth hurt like a stab. Richard looked at Tyler, who really trembled with fear whenever he approached. That's temporary, he stammered. He'll understand when he grows up. Or he'll grow up hating his father, Sarah said softly. Enough, Richard roared. You're fired. Why? For insubordination, for protecting your son, for disrespecting me. Sarah was silent for several seconds, watching Tyler cry silently. All right, she finally said, but before I leave, can I give Tyler a gift? Richard hesitated. What gift? Something that might help him. What kind of thing? A memory of his mother. Richard was confused. You didn't know my wife. I don't need to have known her to understand what she left behind. The enigmatic response left Richard even more disconcerted. There was something very strange about this nanny, and he was about to discover that he had just fired the only person who could save his son and himself. Linda! Richard yelled to the housekeeper, who was nervously cleaning the kitchen. How many nannies have come through here? 15, Mr. Harrison, she replied timidly. 15, he roared at Sarah, who was still there. You're the 16th. Do you know why the others left? Probably because you treated them badly, Sarah replied simply. Richard turned purple with rage. They left because they were incompetent, just like you. Or because they couldn't work in a toxic environment, Sarah suggested calmly. Toxic environment, he exploded. This is the most luxurious home in Manhattan. I pay the best salaries. I offer the best conditions. Money doesn't buy dignity, Sarah observed. Dignity doesn't pay bills. You keep talking about money. Is that the only thing that matters to you? Richard felt attacked. Money is power. It's security. It's freedom. And happiness. Happiness is a luxury for those without responsibilities. Sarah looked around the Millionaire apartment, then at Tyler, who remained hidden. What responsibilities do you have besides scaring your own son? I command a company with 50,000 employees, Richard roared. And at home, what responsibilities do you have here? Support, provide, educate. Love? The word hung in the air like an accusation. Love doesn't build character, Richard said defensively. Doesn't it? Then what does? Discipline, rigidity, demands. Sarah looked at Tyler again. And how's that working? Richard followed her gaze and saw his son trembling with red eyes, clearly traumatized. He will improve with time, he murmured. Will he? In 2 years since his mother's death, has he improved? You don't understand. Losing a mother is difficult. Losing a mother and fearing your father is devastating. The observation hit Richard like a punch. I don't want him to be afraid of me, he reluctantly admitted. Then why do you yell so much? Because that's how my father raised me. And what was your relationship with your father like? Richard hesitated. The truth was he had hated his father for years. That's irrelevant, he said evasively. It is relevant. You're repeating a pattern. What pattern? Emotionally absent father, child who grows up without affection, adult who doesn't know how to show love. The analysis was so precise that Richard was disturbed. You talk like a therapist, he said suspiciously. I speak as someone who has seen many families destroyed by this cycle. What families? Sarah hesitated. It's a long story. Have you worked with other wealthy families? I've worked with families facing trauma. What kind of trauma? Loss, abandonment, emotional neglect. The specificity of the responses was making Richard increasingly curious. Where have you worked? In some places. What places? Institutions that care for at-risk children. Richard was beginning to realize there was something much more complex about this woman. Do you have specific training? I have specific experience. In what? In saving children who are losing their parents emotionally. The phrase hit Richard like a devastating revelation. Tyler isn't losing me, he said defensively. Isn't he? When was the last time you played together? Richard tried to remember. He couldn't. When was the last time you kissed him? Total silence. When was the last time you said you love him? Richard opened and closed his mouth several times, unable to answer. I show love in other ways, he stammered. How? Paying for the best school, the best doctors, the best clothes. That's material provision. What about affection? Affection makes you weak. Who said that? My father. And how did you feel as a child? Richard fell silent, remembering the loneliness, fear, and emotional deprivation that marked his childhood. Different, he admitted quietly. Lonely. Sometimes. Scared. My father was strict. Like your being with Tyler. The connection was undeniable and painful. I don't want him to be weak, Richard said, almost whispering. Love doesn't make you weak. Emotional abandonment does. Sarah approached Tyler and knelt down to his height. Tyler, she said softly, do you want to talk to your daddy? The boy shook his head negatively, afraid. Why not? He yells, Tyler whispered. Richard felt his heart tighten hearing his son. What if he doesn't yell? Sarah asked gently. He will yell, Tyler said with absolute certainty. Richard realized he had become a source of terror for his own son. Tyler, he said, trying to soften his voice, Daddy won't yell. The boy looked at him with total distrust. Promise? I promise, Richard said, surprising himself. Tyler took a timid step toward his father, but still maintaining safe distance. Daddy, he said quietly, why do you yell so much? The innocent question broke something inside Richard. Because Daddy sometimes gets nervous, he admitted. Why do you get nervous? Because I have a lot of work. More work than taking care of me. Tyler's question was like a reality slap. Richard looked at his son, then at Sarah, then at the employees, watching everything in silence. For the first time in 2 years, he saw himself through his son's eyes, and he didn't like what he saw at all. It was in this moment of total vulnerability that his life was about to change forever. Suddenly, Richard's phone rang urgently. It was Dr. Michael Roberts, Tyler's private pediatrician, calling outside normal hours. Richard, the doctor's voice was tense. I need to speak with you immediately. It's about Tyler. What happened? Richard asked, automatically returning to his aggressive tone. The test results came in. We have a serious problem. Richard's blood froze. What kind of problem? I'd prefer to talk in person. Can I come over now? Come, Richard said, hanging up, trembling. Sarah observed the drastic change in his expression. Bad news? It's none of your business, he replied automatically, but without the usual aggressiveness. Is it about Tyler? Richard hesitated. The doctor wants to talk. Can I help? How? Depends on what it is. There was something in her confidence that made Richard hesitate before dismissing her. In 30 minutes, Dr. Roberts arrived with a grave expression Richard had never seen. Richard, he said, briefly greeting Sarah, Tyler's tests revealed something concerning. What? Richard asked, feeling panic growing. He has severe vitamin D deficiency, anemia, and stress markers are extremely high. Plus, he's 18 pounds below ideal. Wait, But that's not serious, right? Richard asked desperately. Richard, Tyler shows clinical signs of severe childhood depression. The words hit like bombs. Depression? He's only 7 years old. Children can develop depression, especially after trauma. His mother's death combined with other environmental factors. The doctor looked meaningfully around, carefully choosing his words. What other factors? Richard asked, though he already suspected the answer. Domestic, stress, constant tension environment, lack of affection. Each word was a stab to Richard's conscience. What does this mean? It means Tyler needs immediate treatment, therapy, medication, and especially what? Radical change in the family environment? Richard fell silent, processing. If we don't treat this now, Dr. Roberts continued, Tyler could develop permanent psychiatric problems, chronic depression, anxiety, relationship difficulties that will last a lifetime. But I can pay for the best treatment in the world, Richard said desperately. It's not about money, Richard. It's about emotional environment. What do you mean? Dr. Roberts looked at Sarah, who had remained discreet, then back at Richard. Tyler needs emotional stability, affection, security. He needs to feel unconditionally loved. I love my son. But does he know that? Richard had no answer. When I talked to Tyler this morning, Dr. Roberts continued, I asked what he wanted most in the world. Do you know what he answered? What? That Daddy would stop being angry with him. The answer devastated Richard completely. Doctor, Sarah interrupted softly, may I ask a question? Dr. Roberts nodded. How much time does Tyler have to reverse this condition? Theoretically, children are resilient, but each day that passes with additional stress worsens the prognosis. And if the environment changed radically, if Tyler lived in an environment of love, security, and stability, he could recover completely in a few months. Richard looked at Sarah, surprised by the technical knowledge of her questions. Do you understand these things? He asked. I understand a little, she replied modestly. Dr. Roberts also seemed impressed. Do you have training in this area? Practical experience, Sarah replied. What kind of experience? Sarah hesitated. I've worked with traumatized children. In what context? Specialized. Institutions. What institutions? Sarah looked at Tyler, who was sitting on the sofa, clearly depressed. May I talk to him? She asked the doctor. Of course. Sarah approached Tyler and sat beside him. Tyler, she said softly, how do you feel? Sad, he replied quietly. Why sad? Because Daddy doesn't like me. Richard felt his heart break. Daddy does like you, Sarah said. Sometimes daddies don't know how to show it. Why don't they know? Because when they were children, nobody showed them. Tyler looked at his father with curiosity. Was Daddy a child too? Yes, he was, and maybe he felt like you feel now. Sad? Sad and alone. Tyler looked at Richard with a new expression, not of fear, but of empathetic curiosity. Did Daddy get sad when he was a child? Richard swallowed hard. Sometimes. Why? Because my daddy also didn't know how to show affection. It was the first time Richard had spoken openly about his childhood with his son. Dr. Roberts watched fascinated as Sarah facilitated the transformation. Tyler, she continued, would you like your daddy to learn how to show he likes you? Can he learn? Yes, he can, but he needs help. What kind of help? Sarah looked at Richard, then at Dr. Roberts. Help from someone who understands families that are having difficulties. And where do we find this person? Tyler asked innocently. Sarah smiled for the first time since she had arrived. Sometimes a person is closer than we imagine. Dr. Roberts was watching the entire interaction with growing admiration. "Sarah," he said, "do you really have experience with this?" "I do," she replied simply. "What kind of training do you have?" Sarah hesitated again, looking at Richard. "It's complicated to explain." "Please explain," Dr. Roberts insisted. "I'm impressed with your approach." "I worked many years helping families in crisis." "Where?" "In various places." "Are you a family therapist?" Sarah was silent for long seconds. "I was," she finally said. The admission created total silence in the room. "What do you mean, was?" Richard asked. "It's a long story." "I have time," Dr. Roberts said, sitting down. "And from what I see, Tyler urgently needs someone with your experience." Sarah looked at Tyler, then at Richard. "If I tell my story," she said calmly, "you'll understand why I'm here." "Please tell us," Richard asked, for the first time genuinely interested in hearing from an employee. Sarah took a deep breath. "My story will explain why I immediately recognized what's happening with Tyler and why I know exactly how to help you." "Continue," Dr. Roberts encouraged. "But first," Sarah said, looking directly at Richard, "I need you to promise something." "What?" "That you won't interrupt me until I finish." Richard nodded. "And that you'll let me show you something that could change everything." "What thing?" Sarah stood up and walked to her bag. "Something that will explain who I really am." Richard and Dr. Roberts watched, fascinated, as Sarah opened her bag and searched for something specific. When she found it, she held it firmly in her hands. "Before showing this," she said, "you need to understand that appearances deceive." "Show us," Richard said, curiosity consuming his impatience. Sarah took a deep breath. "This will explain why I'm here, why I understand what Tyler needs, and why your life is about to change completely." She was about to reveal something that would make Richard swallow all the cruel words he had said. Sarah removed a laminated document from her bag and handed it to Dr. Roberts. "This explains why I immediately recognized Tyler's symptoms." Dr. Roberts looked at the document and his eyes widened. "My God, Sarah, you're—" "What?" Richard asked impatiently. "What is that?" Dr. Roberts looked at Sarah with total respect. "Richard, Sarah is Dr. Sarah Martinez, PhD in child psychology from Harvard, specialization in family trauma from the Tavistock Institute in London." The silence was deafening. "Furthermore," Dr. Roberts continued reading, "she was National Coordinator of the Traumatized Child Protection Program at the Department of Health and Human Services." Richard was speechless. You're a doctor." "I was," Sarah corrected. "What do you mean was?" "I don't practice anymore." "Why not?" Sarah hesitated. "Things happened that made me leave my career." "What things?" "It's complicated." Dr. Roberts studied the document more carefully. "Sarah, according to this, you were considered the top family trauma specialist in America. Why are you working as a nanny?" "Because I need to work," she replied simply. "But with your qualifications, you could—" "I can't practice psychology anymore." "Why not?" Sarah was silent for long seconds. "I was sued for a case that went wrong." "What case?" "I prefer not to talk about it now." Richard was processing the revelation. "You have a PhD and you're working as a nanny. Honest work dignifies. But it's a waste. It's necessity." Dr. Roberts was fascinated. "Sarah, I've read your articles on childhood depression. They're brilliant. Thank you. Especially the study on impact of toxic family environment on child neurological development." Richard was even more confused. "Toxic family environment?" It's when a child lives in constant alert due to domestic stress, Sarah explained technically. It generates permanent neurological changes if not treated. How so? Constant yelling, emotional unpredictability, lack of secure affection. The child's brain interprets it as constant threat. Richard swallowed hard. And this causes what? Depression, anxiety, developmental problems, relationship difficulties in adult life. Exactly the symptoms Tyler is showing, Dr. Roberts completed somberly. Richard felt the world collapse. I caused this? The environment you created did, Sarah replied without cruelty, but with clinical honesty. My God. But it's reversible, she quickly added, if changed immediately. How? Intensive family therapy, radical change in domestic dynamics, and especially what? The father needs to learn to be a father. Dr. Roberts nodded gravely. Sarah is right. Tyler needs a completely different environment. I can change, Richard said desperately. You can, Sarah agreed, but you need professional guidance. Can you guide me? Sarah hesitated. I can't officially practice psychology. Why not? Because of the lawsuit. What lawsuit was that? Sarah took a deep breath. I treated a family where the father was violent. When I reported it, he sued me for breach of confidentiality. I lost my professional license. That's unfair. That's what happens when you report powerful people. Richard fell silent, processing. But you still know how to help? I know. I just can't do it officially. And unofficially. Sarah looked at Tyler, who had fallen asleep on the sofa during the conversation. Unofficially, I can teach a father to love his son. Would you do that? It would depend on the conditions. What conditions? First, you would have to accept that you know nothing about being a father. Richard swallowed his pride. I accept. Second, you would have to follow my guidance completely, even when it contradicts your instincts. I accept. Third, you would have to commit to the process for at least 6 months. I accept. Sarah studied him carefully. And fourth, you would have to pay me as a specialized consultant, not as a nanny. How much? $15,000 a month. Richard didn't even blink. I accept. Dr. Roberts was impressed. Sarah, would this be intensive family therapy? It would be complete family restructuring, she corrected. Tyler needs a father, not just medication. And do you think you can transform Richard? Sarah looked at him analytically. Does he want to change? Desperately, Richard replied. Are you willing to be humiliated in the process? What do you mean? Are you willing to hear painful truths about your behavior? Richard hesitated. I am. Are you willing to cry, be vulnerable, admit mistakes? If it's to save my son, yes. Sarah studied his expression for long seconds. Then we have a deal. When do we start? Now. Now. First lesson, go to Tyler and pick him up without waking him. What for? To take him to bed. With care. Like a loving father would. Richard approached Tyler hesitantly. Slower, Sarah guided. Children feel our energy even when sleeping. Richard slowed his pace. Breathe deeply. Relax your shoulders. He obeyed. Now pick him up as if he were the most precious thing in the world. Richard leaned down and carefully picked Tyler up. The boy didn't wake up, but instinctively snuggled into his father's chest. Richard felt something he hadn't felt in years. A deep emotional connection with his son. How do you feel? Sarah asked quietly. Different, he whispered. How different? Complete. That feeling is called paternal love. I already loved him. No, you possessed him. Now you love him. Dr. Roberts watched the transformation with fascination. Take him to his room, Sarah guided. Lay him down carefully. Cover him. Kiss his forehead. A kiss. Physical demonstration of affection, fundamental for healthy emotional development. Richard carried Tyler to his room, followed by Sarah and Dr. Roberts. He laid his son down carefully, covered him with the blanket, and hesitated before the kiss. Go ahead, Sarah encouraged. He needs to feel that he's loved. Richard kissed Tyler's forehead delicately. The boy smiled slightly in his sleep. He smiled. Richard whispered, moved, because he finally felt security, Sarah explained. When they left the room, Richard was transformed. How did you do that? He asked. Do what? Teach me to be a father in 5 minutes. I just showed you what you already knew in your heart. I didn't know. Yes, you did. You were just afraid. Afraid of what? Of being vulnerable, of showing weakness. And now? Now you've discovered that showing love is the greatest strength that exists. Dr. Roberts was impressed with the transformation. Sarah, in 20 years of medicine, I've never seen such rapid change. It's because Richard really wants to change, she explained. Most parents want their children to change. He wants to change himself. And that's rare? Extremely rare. Richard sat down, still processing the emotions. Sarah, can I ask a personal question? You can. Why did you accept working here? With your qualifications, why didn't you open a private practice? Sarah was silent for several seconds. Because private practice serves those who can pay. I wanted to help those who need it most. But working as a nanny, working where children are suffering, do you look for families in crisis? I end up finding them. How? Sarah hesitated again. It's complicated. There's something else you're not telling, Richard observed. There is. What? Why I came to work specifically here. What do you mean? It wasn't a coincidence. Richard and Dr. Roberts looked at each other. Explain. Sarah took a deep breath. Someone asked me to come. Who? Someone who cares about Tyler. Who cares about my son besides me? Sarah looked him in the eyes. Your wife. The silence was absolute. My wife died 2 years ago, Richard stammered. I know. Then how did she ask you to come? Sarah stood up and walked to the window. Before she died, Elizabeth contacted me. Richard's world stopped. You knew Elizabeth? I knew her. How? We were, friends. What kind of friends? Sarah turned to him. Best friends for 15 years. The revelation hit Richard like lightning. Why did she never mention you? Because you two fought because of me. What do you mean? It's time for you to know the truth about your wife. And about me. Sarah was about to reveal something that would make Richard not only swallow his words, but rethink everything he thought he knew about his own life. Sarah walked to her bag and pulled out a worn leather folder. Her hands trembled slightly. Richard, before opening this, I need you to sit down. Why? Because what I'm going to show you will change everything you think you know about Elizabeth. Dr. Roberts sensed the tension and approached discreetly in case medical support was needed. Sarah, you're scaring me, Richard said. Elizabeth made me promise I would only open this if something happened to her and Tyler was in emotional danger. What kind of danger? Exactly. What's happening now? Sarah opened the folder and pulled out a handwritten letter. This is a letter Elizabeth wrote to you 2 months before she died. A letter? Why didn't she give it to me personally? Because she knew you wouldn't accept hearing it. Hearing what? Sarah handed him the letter. Read it. Richard immediately recognized Elizabeth's delicate handwriting. His hands trembled as he unfolded the paper. My dearest Richard, He began reading aloud, but stopped, abruptly. "Continue," Sarah encouraged. "If you're reading this letter, it means I died, and Sarah kept her promise to take care of Tyler." Richard looked at Sarah, confused. "You must be wondering who Sarah really is. She is the most important person in my life after you and Tyler." "What do you mean?" Richard asked. "Keep reading." "Sarah was my therapist during the 3 most difficult years of my life, when I was lost, destroyed, hopeless. She saved me." Richard stopped, reading. "Elizabeth was in therapy. For 3 years," Sarah confirmed. "Why, she never told me. Because you didn't believe in therapy. You called it stuff for weak people." The memory hit Richard like a slap. It was true. "Keep reading," Sarah asked softly. "Richard, I had severe depression. I thought about killing myself every day. Sarah taught me to live again." The paper trembled in Richard's hands. "Elizabeth was depressed. Very depressed. Why?" "Keep reading," she explains. "The depression began when I realized I was married to a man I loved, but who was becoming like his father. Cold, distant, obsessed with work." Richard felt a stab to his chest. "I tried to talk several times, but you always said I was exaggerating, that I was too sensitive." I really said that," Richard admitted with shame. "Sarah helped me understand that I wasn't crazy, that my emotional needs were valid." Dr. Roberts watched the transformation in Richard's face. "For 3 years, Sarah gave me strength to stay married, to be a present mother to Tyler, to not give up on you. She kept you married to me." "Continue," Sarah said with tears in her eyes. "But when I discovered I was sick, I realized Tyler would be alone with you, and I knew you would repeat with him the same mistakes you were making with me." Richard stopped reading, overcome by emotion. "That's why I asked Sarah to promise she would take care of Tyler if something happened to me, not as a nanny, but as the psychologist she is." "Elizabeth planned this?" "She knew you very well," Sarah replied. "She knew you would treat badly anyone who tried to help Tyler." "Sarah, if you're reading this to him, it means Tyler desperately needs help, and Richard does too." Richard looked at Sarah with mixed admiration and regret. "Richard, Sarah isn't just a psychologist. She's the woman who saved our marriage, even though you never knew. She's the woman who gave me strength to love you despite your flaws. My God. She's the woman who will save our son, and who can save you too, if you let her." Richard could no longer read. Tears blurred his vision. "Please, listen to Sarah. Trust her. She knows you better than you think." "How does she know me if we never met?" "Elizabeth talked about you in every session for 3 years," Sarah explained. "I know your fears, your insecurities, your childhood traumas. She told you everything, including about your father." Richard fell silent, processing the enormity of the revelation. "And Sarah, thank you for accepting to take care of them. I know it's difficult for you to be in a house where you're not recognized for what you really are." "Difficult how?" "I knew you would humiliate me," Sarah explained. "Elizabeth warned me, but I promised her." "Richard, if you're hearing this, it means Sarah has already shown who she is. Listen to her. She'll teach you to be the father Tyler needs." Elizabeth really planned all this? Down to the last detail. "And Sarah, show him the second thing. He needs to understand." "What second thing?" Richard asked. Sarah hesitated, then pulled out a series of photographs from the folder. They were photos of Elizabeth in a clinic, visibly weakened, but smiling next to Sarah. When were these photos taken? From the last months of her life, when she already knew she was going to die. "Why were you meeting?" "Because she wanted to make sure I understood exactly how to take care of Tyler." "What do you mean?" Sarah showed a specific photo, Elizabeth holding Tyler, who must have been about 5 years old. She taught me all his preferences, all his fears, all his quirks. She prepared me to be the substitute mother he would need. Richard studied the photos with growing emotion. Was Elizabeth preparing you to replace me? To complement you, Sarah corrected. She still had hope that you would change. And if I didn't change? Sarah looked directly into his eyes. She gave me legal powers to protect Tyler. What kind of powers? Sarah pulled an official document from the folder. Emergency custody. If you represented emotional danger to Tyler, I could remove him from home. Richard went pale. You could have taken my son? I could, and I almost did. When? This morning, when I saw his emotional state. Why didn't you? Because I saw that you really want to change. Richard was silent for long minutes, processing everything. Elizabeth orchestrated all this? She loved you so much that she prepared a plan to save you even after death. And you accepted? I owed her. She saved my career once. How? When I was sued, Elizabeth testified on my behalf. It was because of her that I didn't go to prison. Elizabeth testified in court. She told the judge how I had saved our marriage, how I was ethical and competent. And you still lost your license? I lost it, but kept my freedom. Richard looked at Sarah with total respect. You sacrificed your career to help me? I sacrificed it to honor a promise to my best friend. And now? Now you need to decide. Decide what? Whether you'll honor Elizabeth's memory by learning to be the father Tyler needs. Richard fell silent, looking at Elizabeth's photos. Did she really believe I could change? She died believing it. And you? I saw you kiss Tyler today. I saw you get emotional. I believe so. Richard stood up and walked to the window. Sarah, can I ask a question? You can. If Elizabeth told you everything about me, do you hate me? Sarah was silent for several seconds. Richard, hatred doesn't build families. Love does. But I treated you terribly. You treated me exactly as Elizabeth said you would. And you still stayed? I stayed for Tyler and for Elizabeth. And now, will you stay for me? Sarah looked at him with tenderness. I'll stay if you let me teach you to be happy. Happy? Elizabeth told me you were never really happy. Not as a child, not as an adult. It's true. I can teach you. How? By teaching you to love and be loved. Richard felt tears streaming down his face. Elizabeth really planned all this? Even this moment? What moment? Sarah smiled through her tears. The moment when you would stop yelling and start listening. Richard looked at her with total admiration. You're incredible. I'm just a woman who honors her promises. Sarah, yes. Thank you. For what? For saving my son. I haven't saved him yet, but we'll save him together. It was at this moment that Richard's life changed forever. He had swallowed not only his words, but all his arrogance, and discovered that the ignorant Nanny was the greatest gift Elizabeth could have left them. 2 weeks later, the transformation in Richard's house was impressive. The heavy atmosphere had given way to something that hadn't existed in years: peace. Good morning, Tyler, Richard said softly, entering his son's room at 7:30 a.m. Good morning, Dad, Tyler replied, smiling genuinely. It was the first time in 2 years that Tyler smiled when seeing his father in the morning. How did you sleep? Well, I dreamed about Mom. Want to tell me about the dream? Tyler got excited. Before, Richard considered dreams nonsense. She said she's happy because you learned to speak softly. The innocence of the observation touched Richard deeply. Dad really changed, didn't he? I'm trying to be the father you deserve." Tyler jumped out of bed and hugged Richard spontaneously. It was the first hug initiated by his son in years. "Sarah taught you to be nice," Tyler said. "She's teaching me many things." In the kitchen, Sarah was preparing breakfast with Linda and Maria, who still couldn't believe the transformation. Dr. Sarah, Linda, said, "Mr. Harrison seems like a different person." "He always was this person," Sarah corrected. "He was just lost." But the change was so fast. When someone really wants to change, change happens. Richard entered the kitchen carrying Tyler, playing airplane. "Can I help with breakfast?" he asked. The employees almost fainted. Richard had never even set foot in the kitchen. "Of course," Sarah smiled. "Tyler, how about teaching your dad to make orange juice?" Tyler was thrilled. "Do you know how to make juice, Dad?" "I don't. Will you teach me?" The role reversal was therapeutic. Tyler, who always felt ignorant, was now teaching something to his father. "First, you cut the oranges like this," Tyler demonstrated proudly. "Is this good?" Richard asked, following his son's instructions. "Perfect, now squeeze hard." They made juice together, laughing when Richard sprayed seeds everywhere. "Dad, you're funny," Tyler laughed. "Funny good or funny bad?" "Funny that I like." Sarah watched the scene with satisfaction. In 2 weeks, she had rebuilt a relationship that seemed destroyed. "Dr. Sarah," Richard said, still getting used to addressing her by her correct title. "What time is today's session?" 3 o'clock. "But first, how did you feel yesterday?" Richard had started doing daily therapy with Sarah. Not officially, but as part of the family restructuring process. "Better. I managed to control my irritation when Tyler spilled milk." "How did you control it?" "I took a deep breath and asked if he had hurt himself like you taught me. And then he apologized and cleaned it up himself. No drama. See the difference? Total. Before I would yell, he would cry. I would yell more. It became a war. And now it's partnership." Tyler heard the conversation and approached. "Dad, why did you yell before?" Richard knelt down to his son's height, as Sarah had taught him. "Because Dad was sad and didn't know how to show it." "Sad about what?" "Because I missed Mom and didn't know how to deal with it." "I miss her too." "I know. And now we can miss her together, without fighting." Tyler hugged his father again. "Sarah said that when people love each other, they help each other when they're sad. She's right. So you help me when I'm sad. Always. And I help you when you're sad. Always." It was exactly the kind of conversation Sarah had worked on with them. Honest, emotional communication. The phone rang. It was Dr. Roberts. "Richard, I received Tyler's new test results." "And?" "Incredible. In 2 weeks, all stress markers have dropped dramatically. He's gained weight, anemia has improved, vitamin D levels have normalized." "Really?" "It's the fastest recovery I've ever seen in cases of childhood depression." Richard looked at Sarah with gratitude. "The family environment changed everything," Dr. Roberts continued. "What are you doing?" "Sarah is teaching us to be a family. Keep doing exactly that. Tyler is recovering extraordinarily." When he hung up, Richard turned to Sarah. "Thank you." "For what?" "For saving my son. We saved him together." "Sarah, can I ask a personal question?" "You can." "Do you have children?" Sarah hesitated. "No." "Why? You would be an incredible mother." "It's complicated." "Want to talk about it?" Sarah looked at Tyler, who was playing distracted. "Maybe someday. But you obviously love children." "I love children." "Then why didn't you have children?" Sarah was silent for long seconds. "Because I dedicated my life to saving other people's children. And now I'm saving my best friend's child." And after Tyler is well, then I'll look for another child who needs help. Richard was thoughtful. Sarah, what if you didn't need to look? What do you mean? What if you could stay here, as part of the family? Sarah looked at him surprised. Richard, I'm an employee. No, you're our family's savior. It's my job. No, it's your gift. Sarah was moved. Richard, when Tyler is completely recovered, my work here will be finished. What if I don't want it to end? What do you mean? What if I want you to stay forever? Forever how? Richard hesitated, realizing he was suggesting something he hadn't even fully processed himself. Like family. The silence was profound. Richard, you're still processing Elizabeth's loss. I know, but I also know you brought something to this house that hadn't existed in years. What? Love. Sarah was speechless. I'm not talking about romance, Richard quickly clarified. I'm talking about family completeness. I understand. You transformed this house into a home. It was you who changed, with your help. Tyler approached them. Sarah, are you going away when I get better? The innocent question created a tense moment. Why do you ask that, Tyler? Because I like you. You make Dad happy. Your dad is learning to be happy on his own, but he's happier with you. The perceptive observation of a 7-year-old hit both of them. Tyler, Sarah said softly, the important thing is for you to be well and happy with your dad. But I'm happier when you two are happy together. Richard and Sarah looked at each other, realizing the child had touched on something neither had verbalized. Tyler, Richard said, would you like Sarah to stay with us always? Stay how? Like part of our family. Tyler got very excited. Like a new mom. No, Richard quickly clarified. Nobody replaces your mom, but like someone special who takes care of us. A special aunt? That's right. Tyler looked at Sarah hopefully. Do you want to be our special aunt forever? Sarah was visibly moved. Tyler, I love taking care of you both. Then stay. It's more complicated than that. Why? Sarah looked at Richard, seeking help. Because, Richard said, Sarah has her own life, her own dreams. What dreams? Tyler asked Sarah. Sarah smiled through her tears. My dream was always to have a family to love. Then we can be your family, Tyler exclaimed. The innocence and pure love of the child broke down Sarah's defenses. You already are my family, she admitted quietly. Tyler ran to hug her, and Richard spontaneously joined the hug. It was the first group hug that House had seen in years, and at that moment, everyone knew that Elizabeth had planned not only Tyler's cure, but the creation of a new family built on true love. 3 months later, when everything seemed perfect, the phone rang with a call that would change everything again. Sarah? The male voice on the other end was formal and threatening. Who is this? Dr. Edward Silver. Remember me. Sarah went pale. It was the man who had destroyed her career. What do you want? I heard you're practicing psychology illegally. I'm not practicing psychology. No. Then what are you doing at Richard Harrison's house? Sarah felt her blood freeze. He was investigating her. I work as a caregiver. A caregiver with a PhD who does family therapy. I don't do therapy. I have witnesses who say otherwise. What witnesses? Employees who were fired. They told me everything. Sarah realized she had been betrayed by staff members Richard had fired months before the transformation. What do you want? She asked directly. Justice. You lost the right to practice psychology. If you continue, you'll go to jail. I'm not charging for psychological services. You're charging $15,000 a month. For what exactly? Sarah couldn't answer. You have 48 hours to leave their house, or I'll file criminal charges. The call ended. Sarah stood in the hallway, trembling. 3 months of hard work, of building a family, were about to crumble. Richard appeared from the office. Sarah, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Richard, I need to talk to you. Sure. What happened? I have to leave. What do you mean? Did something happen? Sarah took a deep breath. Someone reported that I'm practicing psychology without a license. Richard was confused. But you're not practicing psychology. You're taking care of Tyler. Technically, what I do with you is family therapy. So what? I lost my license. If I continue, I could go to prison. Richard went pale. Who reported you? Dr. Edward Silver, the man who destroyed my career. How did he find out? Employees you fired told him. Richard clenched his fists. Which employees? It doesn't matter. The fact is he's right. I'm practicing illegally. Sarah, you saved my family. And now I need to protect you from the consequences. What consequences? If I'm arrested, you get involved. Tyler could be investigated by Child Protective Services. The possibility terrified Richard. You can't let that happen. That's why I'm leaving. Leaving! Tyler shouted from the doorway. They hadn't noticed the boy was listening. Sarah is leaving? He asked, his eyes filling with tears. Tyler! Sarah began. Why? He screamed, running to hug her. You promised you would stay. I know, sweetheart, but no, you can't leave. I need you. Tyler began crying desperately, clinging to Sarah. If you leave, Dad will go back to yelling. No, Tyler. Your dad learned. He learned because you taught him. If you leave, he'll forget. The child's logic was devastating because it had a grain of truth. Richard knelt beside Tyler. Son, Dad won't forget. Yes, you will, Tyler screamed. Without Sarah, you get sad. When you get sad, you yell. Tyler, listen, Sarah tried. No, he screamed. You can't do this to me. The boy ran to his room and slammed the door. Richard and Sarah stood in silence, devastated. Is he right? Richard asked quietly. About what? About me. Forgetting everything I learned if you leave? Sarah hesitated. Richard, you've grown a lot. That doesn't answer my question. You're still in process. In other words, I could regress. It's possible. Richard ran his hands through his hair. I can't let that happen. Richard, we have no choice. Yes, we do. What? We fight. Against whom? Against the law. Against this Edward. He's technically right. And we're morally right. Sarah shook her head. Morality doesn't win lawsuits. Sarah, you saved my family. I won't let anyone destroy this. How will you stop it? Richard was thoughtful. By hiring the best lawyers in America. For what? To prove you weren't practicing psychology illegally. But I was. You were caring for a traumatized child. That's different. Not in the eyes of the law. Richard began pacing back and forth. There has to be a way out. Richard, accept it. There isn't. There is, he yelled, then immediately controlled himself. Sorry, I'm still learning. Sarah smiled sadly. See, you still need help. Then you can't leave. I have to. What if you weren't my employee anymore? What do you mean? What if you were my partner? Sarah was confused. Partner in what? In a family consulting company. Richard, think about it. You'd be a partner in a legitimate company. You wouldn't be practicing psychology. You'd be providing consulting. It's the same thing. No, consulting doesn't require a board license. Sarah was thoughtful. Could this work? It could, and more. It would be a company that helps families in crisis. A company. You always said you want to help those who need it most. Imagine a company that offers family restructuring for people who can't afford expensive psychologists. The idea began to excite Sarah. Would it be like an NGO? It would be a social enterprise, controlled profit, focus on impact. And would it work legally? With the right lawyers, yes. Sarah was processing the possibility, but Edward would keep persecuting. Leave Edward to me. What are you going to do? Richard smiled for the first time since the call. I'm going to use what he doesn't have. What? Real power. Richard, don't do anything illegal. I won't do anything illegal. I'll do something completely legal that will destroy him. What? An investigation into his practices. What do you mean? Sarah, Edward destroyed your career for reporting corruption? Yes. Then he's corrupt? Probably. Men like him always have skeletons in the closet. So what? I'm going to hire investigators to find those skeletons. That's completely legal. Private investigation is allowed. Sarah was worried. Richard, I don't want you to get involved in a war because of me. It's not because of you. It's for my family's sake. Even so, Sarah, you saved my son. You saved me. Do you really think I'll let some worm destroy this? His determination was impressive. What if it goes wrong? What if it goes right? Richard, Sarah, do you trust me? I trust you. Then let me fight for you. Why? Because that's what people who love each other do. They fight for each other. The word love hung in the air. Richard, Sarah, I love you. The silence was total. Not as a man loves a woman, he quickly clarified. As family loves family. I understand. You're part of our family. And families protect each other. Sarah was moved. What if I still have to leave? Then we'll go together. What do you mean? Tyler and I. We'll go wherever you go. Richard, you have a company. I have a family. I can rebuild a company. A destroyed family can't be rebuilt. Sarah began to cry. Why are you doing this? Because you taught me that love is action, not words. And this is action. This is war, and I'm going to win. At that moment, Tyler opened his bedroom door. Dad is going to fight for Sarah to stay? I am, son. Can I help? You can, by being strong while Dad solves everything. Tyler ran to hug both of them. Are we a real family? We are, Richard confirmed. And families stay together forever. Forever, Sarah promised. Then we're going to win this fight together. The first battle had been won. They had a strategy. Now came the hardest part. Executing it without destroying the family they had fought so hard to build. The next day, Richard called an emergency meeting with his best lawyers and private investigators. Gentlemen, he said to the 5 men at the conference table, I need to destroy someone, legally. Dr. Charles Matthews, his personal lawyer for 10 years, leaned forward. Who's the target? Dr. Edward Silver, psychologist who works mainly with wealthy families. What did he do? He destroyed the career of an honest person, and now he's trying to destroy my family. How? Richard told the whole story. Elizabeth, Sarah, Tyler's transformation, and now the threat. I understand, Dr. Matthews said. And what do you want us to do? I want to find everything rotten this man has ever done. Robert Santos, the private investigator, took notes. What kind of thing are we looking for? Corruption, bribery, breach of confidentiality, anything that proves he uses his power to persecute people. This could take weeks. You have 48 hours. Richard, Dr. Matthews intervened, 48 hours is impossible. Nothing is impossible with enough resources. How much do you need? For an investigation of this magnitude fast. How much? $500,000. Transferred. Now work. Meanwhile, at home, Sarah tried to maintain normalcy with Tyler, who was visibly anxious. Sarah, will Dad succeed? Your dad is very determined. But what if he doesn't succeed? Then we'll find another way. What way? Sarah hesitated. She didn't want to lie to the child. Tyler, sometimes in life, things get difficult. Like when Mom died? Yes, but do you know what I learned? What? That real families always find a way to stay together. Even when it's difficult? Especially when it's difficult. Tyler was thoughtful. Sarah, can I tell you a secret? Of course. Sometimes I pretend you're my mom. Sarah felt her heart tighten. Tyler. Not to replace my real mom, but like a second mom. And how do you feel when you pretend? That? Happy, complete. Complete how? Like our family doesn't have a hole. The observation was too profound for a child. Tyler, our family will never have a hole as long as we love each other. Even if you go away, even if I'm physically far away, I'll always love you. But it's better to love up close. Sarah laughed through her tears. It's much better to love up close. At that moment, Sarah's phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello? Dr. Sarah Martinez? Who wants to know? I'm a journalist from Truth Portal. I'd like to ask some questions about Dr. Edward Silver. Sarah was alert. What kind of questions? About the lawsuit he filed against you 3 years ago. How did you find out about that? We're investigating a series of complaints against him. What kind of complaints? Persecution of professionals, abuse of power, possible corruption. Sarah felt hopeful. Other people have complained about him? You would be the 5th psychologist. 5th? Apparently, Dr. Edward has a pattern of destroying careers of people who threaten his schemes. What schemes? Can we talk in person? I have information that might help you. Where? Central Cafe in 1 hour. I'll be there. Sarah hung up excited. Tyler, I have to go out quickly. Where? To solve some problems. Problems about you staying? Maybe. Can I come? Not this time, but when I come back, I might have good news. At Central Cafe, Sarah met Maria Oliveira, a 35-year-old investigative journalist. Dr. Sarah, thank you for coming. What information do you have? First, tell me your version of what happened 3 years ago. Sarah told the whole story. The violent family, the report, the lawsuit, the destruction of her career. As I suspected, Maria said. You weren't the first. What do you mean? Dr. Edward Silver has a pattern. He serves wealthy and powerful families. When psychologists discover crimes in these families and report them, he intervenes. How? He uses influence to persecute the whistleblowers, builds cases based on technicalities. And does this work? It used to work. Until now. What changed? One of his victims was a federal judge's daughter. When she was professionally destroyed, her father investigated and discovered that Edward receives money from powerful families to silence reports. Sarah was shocked. That's obstruction of justice, bribery, criminal conspiracy. Will he be arrested? If we get enough evidence. What kind of evidence? Your case would be crucial. Do you have documents from that time? I have everything. Suspicious bank transfers, recorded conversations, witnesses. Some things. Dr. Sarah, would you testify against him? Sarah hesitated. If he's arrested, can I get my license back? Probably yes, especially if it's proven that the case against you was fraudulent. And how long would this take? If everything goes well, a few months. A few months, that's too long. Why? Sarah told about the situation with Richard and Tyler. I understand, but we have an idea. What? If we can get evidence that he's persecuting you again for personal reasons, we can get a restraining order. What kind of order? Prohibiting him from prosecuting you until the investigation is over. Is that possible? With a sympathetic judge and solid evidence, yes. Sarah got excited. What evidence do we need? Recording of the threat he made. I didn't record it, but we can provoke a new call. How? You call him, question his motivations, and record everything. Is that legal? Recording your own conversation is legal in the United States. Sarah was thoughtful. What if it goes wrong? What if it goes right? Okay, let's try. They arranged to meet the next day to prepare the call. When Sarah got home, she found Richard excited. Sarah, we have news. I have news, too. They told their discoveries simultaneously. So, Richard summarized, both the private investigation and the journalistic investigation are finding evidence against Edward. It seems so. Does this mean we're going to win? It means we have a real chance. Tyler appeared running. Did Dad and Sarah find a way to stay together? We're working on it, Richard said. And can I help? You can, Sarah said, by being brave. I am brave. Then the next day, Sarah prepared for the most important call of her life. With Maria beside her and professional recording equipment, she dialed Edward's number. Dr. Edward Silva. Edward, this is Sarah Martinez. Sarah, what a surprise. Did you change your mind about leaving the Harrison house? Actually, I called to better understand your motivations. What motivations? Why you're so interested in my case specifically? Because you're breaking the law? Or because I'm threatening something you want to protect? There was a pause. What are you talking about? I'm talking about your real relationship with certain powerful families. I don't know what you're talking about. No? Then why did you receive $50,000 from the Alvarenga family 3 days after my case was approved? The information was a lie, but based on patterns the investigators had discovered. Who told you that? So you admit you received it? I don't admit anything. Edward, I discovered your scheme. What scheme? You're paid by wealthy families to persecute professionals who report them. That's slander. It's the truth. And now you're doing the same thing to me. Sarah, you don't know who you're messing with. Yes, I do. I'm messing with a corrupt man who uses the psychology board to protect criminals. You're going to regret this. Regret what? Discovering the truth? I'm going to destroy your life completely, like you did with the other 4. Psychologists? Total silence. How do you know about the others? Because I'm not the only one you're persecuting. Sarah, listen carefully. If you don't leave the Harrison house by tomorrow, I'll make sure you're arrested. Based on what? Illegal practice of the profession. And if I prove you're being paid by the family I reported 3 years ago? That's impossible. Is it? Then why are you nervous? I'm not nervous. Edward, you made a mistake. What mistake? You messed with the wrong family. What do you mean? Richard Harrison has resources to investigate everything about you. He won't find anything. He already found it. Another long pause. Found what? The bank transfers, the secret meetings, the families you protected. That's a lie. Edward, you have a choice. What choice? Stop persecuting me, or I'll make everything public. You have no proof. I have this conversation recorded. You recorded it? I recorded everything, including your threats. You can't. Yes, I can. Recording your own conversation is legal. Edward was silent for long seconds. Sarah, let's make a deal. What kind of deal? I stop persecuting you, and you don't release this recording. No. What do you mean, no? I won't make deals with corrupt people. Then what do you want? I want you to publicly confess that the case against me was fraudulent. That's impossible. Then prepare for war. Sarah, you don't understand who the people behind this are. Who are they? People who can destroy anyone, including you? Wait, I didn't say that. Yes, you did. You just admitted there are people behind this. Damn. Edward, last chance. Confess or go to jail. Sarah, if I confess, they'll kill me. Who are they? I can't say. Then choose, them or jail. Edward was silent for almost a minute. Sarah, do you really have evidence against me? I do. How many people know about this? Enough. Journalists? Among others. My God, they're really going to kill me. Edward, if you cooperate with justice, you can enter witness protection. Witness protection. If you testify against whoever sent you to persecute psychologists, and if I don't cooperate, you go to jail alone. And will you get your license back? Probably. And continue with the Harrisons? That's what I hope. Edward sighed deeply. Sarah, can I trust you? You can. If I confess everything, do you guarantee I'll be protected? I guarantee I'll do everything for that. Okay, but not over the phone. Where? Do you know Central Park Cafe? I know it. 1 hour, and Sarah, yes, come alone. Why? Because if they find out I'm going to confess before it's time, I won't make it to the cafe alive. The call ended. Maria was ecstatic. Sarah, it was perfect. He confessed everything. He confessed, but now he wants to meet. It could be dangerous. Why? If he's telling the truth about powerful people, they might do anything to silence him. And silence me too. Exactly. Sarah was thoughtful. But it's our only chance. Sarah, let's call the police. Not yet. If we call before he confesses, he might deny everything. Then what do we do? I'll go to the meeting, but with protection. What protection? Richard. He's not a police officer. No, but he's a man who fights for his family. Sarah called Richard and told him everything. Sarah, I won't let you go alone. He said to come alone. Then I'll stay hidden nearby. Richard. Sarah, this isn't a discussion. Either we go together or you don't go. Okay, and one more thing. What? I already hired private security. They'll be positioned around the cafe. Isn't that excessive? Not when it comes to my family's safety. Sarah was moved. Richard, thank you. For what? For fighting for me. Sarah, I already told you, family protects each other. Even when it's dangerous, especially when it's dangerous. And Tyler? He stays with Dr. Roberts. Safe place. You thought of everything. I thought about not losing you. Richard, Sarah, I love you. As family, but I love you. I won't let anyone hurt you. I love you too. Then let's end this today. The meeting at the cafe would be the final battle. A battle that would define not only Sarah's professional destiny, but the future of the entire family they had built. At Central Park Cafe, Sarah arrived punctually at 3 p.m. Edward was already there, visibly nervous, constantly looking around. Sarah, you came. I said I would. Alone? Alone. He didn't notice that Richard was at a discreet table 10 meters away, nor that there were private security guards strategically positioned. Edward, you said you were going to confess. Before that, I need guarantees. What guarantees? That I won't be killed. Who wants to kill you? Edward looked around nervously. The families I protected. What families? Sarah, you can't imagine the size of this scheme. Then tell me. They're not just ordinary wealthy families. They're politicians, judges, businessmen connected to organized crime. Sarah feigned surprise, though she already suspected. organized crime, money laundering through psychological clinics. I protected therapists who didn't ask questions about the origin of patients' money, and honest psychologists were eliminated from the market. How? False lawsuits, professional persecution, reputation destruction. Like mine, like yours. Edward, how many professionals did you destroy? 12. 12. Over 5 years. Sarah was shocked. And how much did you receive for this? 50,000 per eliminated professional, plus a monthly amount of 10,000. 60,000 a month? Sometimes more, depending on the case. My God. Sarah, I didn't want to. They forced me. How? They discovered I was embezzling money from the psychology board. They blackmailed me. You were stealing from the board? Small amounts to cover gambling debts. Are you a gambling addict? I was. They offered me a way out. Working for them? Exactly. And now? Now they want me to destroy you too. Why? I didn't report money laundering. You reported a family that was being investigated by the FBI. The family. From the case 3 years ago? Yes, they were being monitored. Your report accelerated the investigation. And 3 people were arrested, 50 million in losses. And they blamed me? They blamed you. Sarah began to understand the magnitude of the problem. Edward, who are these people? I can't say names over the phone. Too dangerous. Then write them. Edward took a sheet of paper and began writing names. Sarah recognized politicians, businessmen, even a federal judge. My gods, is this real? It's just the tip of the iceberg. Edward, will you testify about this if you protect me? How? Witness protection, new identity, leaving the country if necessary. That's with the FBI. Do you know anyone there? I can get contacts. Then I'll confess everything. Now. Now. Edward took a small recorder from his pocket. I've been recording my confession for 10 minutes. Why? In case something happens to me, I want the truth to survive. At that moment, Sarah noticed 2 men in suits entering the cafe and looking directly at Edward. Edward, she whispered, there are 2 strange men over there. Edward looked and went pale. Damn! They followed me. Who are they? Hired muscle. Sarah, you need to get out of here now. What about you? I'll try to negotiate. Edward, come with me. No. If we run together, they'll come after you too. One of the men began approaching. Sarah, take the recorder and go. Edward pushed the recorder toward her. Everything's recorded there. Names, amounts, schemes. Edward, go. Sarah got up quickly, but the man was approaching very fast. It was then that Richard appeared. Sarah, with me, now. He grabbed her arm and they started running. What about Edward? She asked. The security guards will protect him. They ran out of the cafe while Richard's private security surrounded Edward and the 2 suspicious men. On the street, Richard quickly led Sarah to the armored car he had hired especially for that day. Sarah, are you okay? I am, but what about Edward? My security will protect him until the police arrive. Did you call the police? I called them the moment I saw the suspicious men. Sarah showed the recorder. Richard, everything's here. His entire confession. Really? Names, amounts, schemes, everything. Then we won? I think so. Richard's phone rang. It was one of the security guards. Mr. Harrison, Edward is safe. The 2 men fled when the police arrived. And Edward, he's giving his statement. He asked me to tell you he's going to tell everything. Perfect. When he hung up, Sarah was radiant. Richard, we did it. We did what? We got enough evidence to destroy the entire scheme. And you? I'm going to get my license back. I can practice psychology legally again. And us? Sarah looked at him with tenderness. We can stay together. Forever. Richard hugged her in the car. Sarah, thank you. For what? For not giving up on us. Family doesn't give up on family, even when it's dangerous, especially when it's dangerous. They returned home where Tyler was waiting anxiously with Dr. Roberts. Sarah, Tyler screamed, running to hug her. Did you win? We won, my love. Are you going to stay forever? Forever? And are you going back to being a doctor? I am. So you can be a doctor and our family. I can be both things. Tyler turned to Dr. Roberts. Doctor, now we have two important people taking care of me. That's right, Tyler. You're a very lucky boy. Why? Because you have a family that fights for you. Tyler looked at Richard and Sarah. Dad, now you and Sarah are going to take care of me together. We are, son. And are you going to get married? The innocent question created an awkward silence. Tyler, Sarah said softly, marriage is a complicated thing. Why? Because your dad and I are great friends who love each other like family. But families can get married, can't they? Richard and Sarah looked at each other. Some families can, Richard said carefully. So you can. We can. If we want to. And do you want to? Another awkward pause. Tyler, Sarah said, how about we let time decide that? How much time? Whatever time is necessary. But you'll stay together in the meantime. We will. And you'll keep loving me? Forever. Then that's good. Dr. Roberts smiled at the child's simplicity. Tyler, the important thing is that you're happy together. We're very happy. 3 hours later, Maria called with extraordinary news. Sarah, Edward confessed everything. The FBI opened an investigation into the entire scheme. And the other professionals. All cases will be reviewed. You're all going to get your licenses back. All of us? All of you. And more, Edward entered witness protection. He's going to testify against everyone involved. This means you're free. You can practice psychology normally. Sarah began crying with relief. Thank you, Maria. Sarah, one last question. What? Are you going back to working normally or staying with the Harrison family? Sarah looked at Richard and Tyler, who were watching anxiously. I'm going to do both things. How? I'm going to open a clinic specialized in family therapy, and the Harrison family will be my first success case. And your permanent case? Richard asked. My permanent case, she confirmed. Tyler screamed with joy and jumped into her arms. Sarah is going to stay forever and help other families too. Exactly. Then you're going to be the most important doctor in America. Sarah laughed. I'm going to be the happiest doctor in America. Why? Because I'm going to work with the family I love. 6 months later, life had found a perfect rhythm. Sarah opened Hope Clinic, specialized in family therapy, focusing on families in crisis. The clinic was in the same building as Richard's office, and they had lunch together every day. Good morning, Dr. Sarah, Tyler said, entering her office. Good morning, my love. How was school? Great. I told the teacher that my family is the happiest in school. And is it really? It is, because we have a dad who learned to be caring and a second mom who teaches everyone to be happy. Sarah was moved. Tyler had naturally started calling her second mom, without pressure from anyone. Tyler, you know I love you very much, right? I know, and I love you too. Can I ask you something? Of course. Are you and Dad going to get married someday? The question Tyler had been asking periodically for 6 months. Why do you want us to get married so much? Because then you'll stay together forever for real. Tyler, we already stay together forever. But getting married is more official. Sarah laughed at his logic. And if we get married, what changes? Nothing, it just becomes more certain. More certain how? Like when you adopt a dog. He was already family, but adopting makes it official. The childish analogy was perfect. I understand. And would you like me to be adopted officially? I would love it. I'll talk to your dad about it. Really? Really? Tyler ran out to tell Richard. That night, after Tyler slept, Sarah and Richard talked on the terrace. Richard, can I ask a serious question? You can. How do you see me? What do you mean? Am I an employee, friend, family? Richard was thoughtful. Sarah, you're complicated to define. Why? Because you're all of that together. Elaborate. You're Tyler's psychologist, my personal consultant, my best friend, my son's second mother, and the woman who brought love back to our house. Just that? Richard looked into her eyes. Sarah, can I be honest? Always. I've been thinking about asking you to marry me for 2 months. Sarah was surprised. Really? Really? But I'm confused. Confused why? Because I don't know if it's because I love you romantically or because I want to make our family official. And what would be the difference? If it's romantic love, it's my selfishness. If it's to make family official, it's for Tyler. Sarah smiled. Richard, can I tell you a secret? You can. I've been thinking about the same thing for 3 months. Really? And I came to a conclusion. What? It doesn't matter if it's romantic love or family love. Why? Because the result is the same. We stay together, take care of each other, raise Tyler together. And that's enough? For me it is. For me too. So, Sarah Martinez, Richard said, kneeling on the terrace, will you marry me? For what specific reason? Because I want to spend the rest of my life taking care of you and being taken care of by you. And Tyler. And raising our son together. Our son. Tyler has been ours since the day you arrived here. Sarah began to cry. Richard, is it yes or no? It's yes, but with one condition. What? That you understand I'll always love Elizabeth too. Sarah, Elizabeth orchestrated all this. I'm sure she's happy with our decision. How can you be sure? Because Tyler is happy. And the only thing Elizabeth wanted was for Tyler to be happy. And you. I want you to be happy. I am happy. Then let's make our happiness official? Sarah laughed through her tears. Let's. The next day when they told Tyler, he had the most beautiful reaction possible. Finally, he screamed. Now Sarah is going to be my official second mom. How do you feel about this? Sarah asked. Complete. Like our family found all the pieces. What pieces? Caring dad, loving second mom, and me in the middle being happy. And Mom Elizabeth. She's happy in heaven because she managed to arrange a perfect family for me. Tyler's emotional maturity at 8 years old was impressive. Tyler, Richard said, do you want to help me choose Sarah's ring? Can I? You can. After all, she's going to be your mother too. Not my mother, Tyler corrected. My second mom. The first will always be Mom Elizabeth. That's right. But the second mom is also forever. Forever, Sarah promised. Then let's choose the most beautiful ring in the world. 1 year later, in the garden of Sarah's clinic, the most moving wedding New York had ever seen took place. Dear friends and family, the officiant began, we're here to celebrate not only the union of Richard and Sarah, but the officialization of a family that was built through love, forgiveness, and transformation. Tyler, as ring bearer, carried the rings with immense pride. Tyler, the officiant said, would you like to say something? I would. Tyler approached the microphone. People, I want to tell you a story. The guest smiled. expecting childish innocence. 2 years ago, my dad was very angry, and I was very sad. Then Mom Elizabeth sent Sarah to help us. Sarah and Richard were moved. At first, Dad was very mean to Sarah. He called her an ignorant nanny and said a bunch of bad things. Richard turned red with shame, but Tyler continued. But Sarah didn't give up on us. She taught Dad to be caring and taught me that it's normal to miss Mom. And then, Tyler continued, Sarah showed Dad that she was super smart and important, and Dad was embarrassed for being mean. But you know what happened? Dad learned to apologize, and Sarah forgave him, and now we're the happiest family in the world. The guests were moved by the childish narrative. And I learned something very important, Tyler said, looking directly at the adults. What thing? That sometimes the most important person in our life arrives disguised as someone ordinary. The observation from an 8-year-old silenced 200 adults. Sarah arrived disguised as a nanny, but she was our savior. Dad seemed angry, but he was just lost. And I seemed sad, but I just needed love. Tyler turned to Sarah and Richard. Thank you for teaching me that real families choose each other. They're not just born ready. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Now, Tyler said with a mischievous smile, you can kiss and I'll allow it. The audience exploded in laughter and applause when Richard and Sarah kissed, making official not only the marriage but 3 years of transformation. Tyler ran to hug both of them. Now we're officially a complete family, he shouted. Forever, Sarah promised. Forever, Richard agreed. At the party, Dr. Roberts approached Sarah. Dr. Sarah, can I ask a question? Of course. How did you manage to transform Richard so completely? Sarah looked at Richard, who was playing with Tyler in the garden. I didn't transform anyone, Doctor. What do you mean? I just showed him who he always was in his heart. And who was he? A father who loved his son but didn't know how to show it. And how did you discover that? Elizabeth told me. She always knew Richard was a good man who was lost, not a bad man. And you believed her. I believed her, and I bet my life on it. And it worked. It worked because true love always finds a way. Dr. Roberts was thoughtful. Sarah, do you think anyone can change? I think anyone can find themselves again. What's the difference? Change implies the person was bad and became good. Finding yourself implies the person was always good, just lost. And Richard was lost. Very lost. Lost in pain, loneliness, fear of being vulnerable. And you found him. We found each other. He taught me to trust again. I taught him to love again. And Tyler. Tyler taught us that family's about choice, not just blood. At that moment, Richard approached. What are you talking about? About how you found each other, Dr. Roberts explained. Ah, Richard smiled. Actually, Sarah found me. What do you mean? She came looking for a child who needed help and found an entire lost family. And now? Now she has a family that will protect her forever. Sarah was moved. Richard, Sarah, 3 years ago, you saved me when I didn't even know I needed saving. And you gave me a family when I thought I'd never have one. Tyler appeared running. Dad, Sarah, come see. What happened? Maria brought the newspaper. There's an article about you. They went to see. The headline read, Psychologist who saved family marries ex-patient. A story of love and transformation. Read the part about me, Tyler asked excitedly. Sarah read aloud. Tyler Harrison, now 8 years old, is living proof that love can heal any trauma. From a depressed and scared child, he became a confident boy who says, my family is special because we choose each other every day. Is that true, Tyler? Richard asked. It is. Every morning I wake up and choose to love you, and you choose to love me. That's why it works." The child's profound simplicity summed up everything. "Tyler," Sarah said, "you're the wisest boy I know. I learned from you." "What did you learn?" "That family isn't about being perfect. It's about forgiving, growing, and choosing each other every day." "And anything else?" "That sometimes the person who seems most like our enemy can be our greatest salvation." Tyler looked at Richard. "Dad, do you remember when you called Sarah an ignorant nanny?" Richard turned red. "I remember, and I regret it a lot." "I don't regret it." "Why?" "Because if you hadn't been mean at first, we never would have seen how incredible Sarah was." "What do you mean?" "If you had been nice from the beginning, she would have been just another nanny. But since you were mean and she showed who she was anyway, we discovered she was special." The childish logic was brilliant. "So," Tyler continued, "sometimes bad things at the beginning are so we can appreciate good things later." "Tyler," Sarah said, amazed, "are you going to be a psychologist when you grow up?" "No! No? Why?" "Because I'm going to be a dad who already knows how to love from the beginning." "And how will you learn that?" "By watching my dad and my second mom." The conversation was interrupted by Maria, who approached with news. "Sarah, I have a surprise." "What surprise?" "I just found out you won an award." "What award?" "National Model Family Award of the Year." "Really?" "The committee said your story represents hope for all families in crisis in America." Tyler was thrilled. "Are we a model family?" "You are." "What does that mean?" "It means you're going to appear on television telling how you became happy." "And can I talk on TV?" "You can." "Then I'm going to tell everyone that ignorant nannies can be incredible people in disguise." Everyone laughed. "Tyler," Richard said, "what message would you give to other families?" Tyler became serious, thinking like an adult. "I would say, don't give up on each other. Sometimes the person who's being mean is just scared or sad, and sometimes the person who seems ordinary is really special. And more, that real families fix themselves together. Nobody needs to be perfect, they just need to want to be better. And for children who are sad, that there's always someone who will love them. Sometimes that person takes time to arrive, but they always arrive. And if parents are fighting, that love is stronger than anger, but sometimes parents need help to remember that." Sarah was moved by his maturity. "Tyler, you saved our family as much as I did." "How?" "You taught us that children aren't their parents' property, they're shared responsibility. And you taught us that a child's love can heal adult pain," Richard added. "So we all saved each other, together." "Exactly." "And Mom Elizabeth?" "Mom Elizabeth was our guardian angel who arranged everything to work out." Tyler looked at the sky. "Thank you, Mom Elizabeth, for sending Sarah to us." And at that moment, a gentle breeze passed through the garden, as if Elizabeth really was there, approving the family her love had created. Finale. 3 years after the first humiliation, Richard Harrison was in the same office where he had called Sarah an ignorant nanny. But now the office was hers, and he was there for a marriage consultation. "Dr. Sarah," he said formally, "thank you for seeing me." "Dr. Richard," she replied playfully. "What's the reason for the consultation?" "I'm having problems with my wife." "What kind of problems?" "She's too smart, too competent, and too loving. I'm feeling inadequate." Sarah laughed. "And what would be the solution?" "For her to continue being perfect and for me to continue trying to deserve her." "I accept the case. What's the fee?" "A good night kiss every day for the rest of our lives." "I accept." Tyler, now 11 years old, entered the office. "Dad, Sarah, did you finish the pretend therapy?" We finished, Sarah laughed. Great, because I have an important question. What? When are you going to give me a little brother? Richard and Sarah looked at each other, surprised. Tyler, Sarah began, I know that technically I'm only Dad's son, but you're both my parents, and siblings make families. More fun. And if it's a little sister, Richard asked, even better, then I'll teach her everything I learned about special families. What would you teach? That family isn't about DNA. It's about who stays when everything gets difficult. And more, that sometimes the most important people arrive disguised as ordinary people. And if they ask how our family was formed, I'll tell them it started with a lost dad, a sad child, and a nanny who wasn't a nanny. And how did it end? With a happy dad, a confident child, and a second mom who taught us that true love never gives up. Tyler stopped and smiled. And I'll say that the most important phrase in our story was when Dad yelled, "Ignorant nanny," at Sarah. Why? Because that's when our real life began. And so, 3 years after a cruel humiliation, Richard Harrison had learned that the most important words of his life were the ones he most regretted saying, because they were the words that brought Sarah to his family, and Sarah had proven that sometimes swallowing your own words is the first step to finding true happiness.